And we're recording. Hello, everyone. Okay, let me just settle down a bit. So yesterday, 2 days ago, Fiona posted the post with the title, "No One Died from a Thought," which raised quite a discussion between me and another another gentleman, Robert. And I thought it would be really interesting to discuss it. And then Maria Mayer asked a very interesting question, one that I've been toying with, thinking about for years. So when she asked, what about 4 years? So when and I was thinking about it last night, how am I going to answer? I do have a basic idea, but I thought it really would tie in well with this conversation. So, and I'd like the format of this for tonight to be one where, Fiona, that you obviously give your thoughts about it and your explanations, but then we really make it an organic conversation when everyone takes part and we listen to one another and hopefully with some deep listening. But I really want us to participate together. Mm-hmm. So, Fiona.
I'm just seeing if I can get the post up, because you mentioned somebody else had concert.
You're breaking up. And
am I? Oh.
Is she breaking up?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now or not?
Yes. Was I breaking up?
No, you sounded fine to me.
Okay, carry on. I'll see. If you do break up, I'll stop. I'll tell you again. Don't worry.
So did Maria post her question on my original post?
No, they're separate. They were one link to Garrett Kramer's, but I think they tie in nicely. So first we'll see what happens anyway.
Okay, I was just looking. Was it Mary Mann? I don't know.
No,
I was just looking for her. I was just looking for her message, but if it's not there, you can tell me all about it. That's fine.
Yes, and it's something it's okay. Just let's start with your post, because that's what this conversation was all about. No one died from a thought. Then we'll carry on.
Do you want me to just briefly introduce myself as well?
Yes, please.
Okay, so my name's Fiona Wright, and I am I'm a 3 principles transformation coach. And I have been around the principles for coming up for 4 years now. But literally, I met Jamie Smart for the first time in January 4 years ago. And I was having a pretty tough time of life, to be honest, for a very long time. And I knew something needed to shift. And I'd seen a friend of mine who had started making big changes in her life. And she asked me an important question in the November prior to this. When I was beating myself up madly about not doing webinars and whatever on healthy eating. And she said, well, maybe that's your wisdom telling you it's not the right time or it's not the right thing. And a whole weight dropped off my shoulders. I thought that was interesting. And when I saw how many changes had happened in her life, I thought, I don't know what she's on, but I want some of it. So I went off to this meeting with Jamie Smart and hadn't got a clue what he was talking about. Thought he was dead unprofessional. He got up there, he rambled from the front. It didn't seem to make much sense. And but I showed up. And then I bought his book. And when I went the following month, I said to him, I bought your book. Will you sign it for me? So he signed it. And I knew I was never going to read it because I never read books. I find it very difficult to get from one end of the book to another. And he said to me, it just came out on Audible. I said, oh, great. So I ordered it on Audible. And I just started listening and things started to shift. And I thought, this is really interesting. I want to be in this conversation more. So I wanted to sign up for a half-day course with Jamie. And by the time I booked the time off work and got it all agreed, there were no places left. So I emailed him and said, hey, can you squeeze me in? And he said, no, but I would do a call with you. So we had a conversation, during which I showed up with my bucket list of things to change in my life, none of which we ended up talking about. But the one thing we did end up talking about was the fact that I was finding it difficult to get a lodger with in my spare room. And interestingly, afterwards, 3 days later, I had a lodger. Now, I don't really know whether that was relevant or not, but I decided, given on my friend's results and the things I'd been seeing differently through listening to his book, that even though I'd promised I'd never spend any more money, because I spent so much on personal development stuff prior to this, that I would do this course, do his clarity course, which I did. And it's been nothing short of transformational, really, for me. And I went off to the Three Principles conference, and I went on a retreat with Jamie. I never intended to become a coach. I just basically did, because it's so powerful. And it's made such a difference in my life that I really see the value of sharing it with other people. Because I without any real concrete reason, I suffered a lot when I was younger, or even up to, in fact, suffered still quite a lot, even up to 5 years ago, but in some areas of my life. And I don't want other people to suffer, because you pay the consequences. And I know from personal experience with cancer that they're not funny. So I really felt like I wanted to give back. And so I started coaching. So that's where I am at the moment. And I have a particular interest in stress and well-being at work, and encouraging people to look after their own health. And I've run a couple of workshops called Stress Less, Achieve More, and From Worry to Wisdom, the other one's called. I'm going to run the From Worry to Wisdom 4 times this year for a cancer charity, which I'm very excited about. So I'm kind of, in a sense, I'm beginning to kind of put myself out there a bit and share my views a bit more, which is why I was writing posts. And this particular post was interesting, because I actually, hand on heart, can honestly say that it was my fault. I was tired, and I wrote something I didn't actually mean to write. I meant to write, no one ever died of a feeling, because it was about the feeling, about the fact that I've been going up and down a lot lately, which I haven't been doing for quite some time. And I was kind of wondering what was going on. And so I wanted to just share about, feelings do go up and down, and that's totally normal. And the fact, other people had said to me, oh, it could be this, and it could be that, and it could be the other. And actually I was sitting back thinking, no, it can't, because I know, I now know, I'm very fortunate that I've kind of got to the stage where at an embodied level, I understand where my feelings and my experience comes from. I clearly don't always understand it. Otherwise I wouldn't be having these swings up and down, but I have enough faith now that I can kind of let it go and just tell myself, yeah, where these are really coming from, even if it doesn't look like that. And I just leave them alone. I don't poke and prod and stir them up, to the best of my ability anyway. Sometimes I do, and sometimes they get very, I've had a couple of times recently during this up and down period where I have been really stuck in it, but I haven't let it worry me in the same way that I have done in the past. So then this kind of conversation ensued about this, because I wrote, no one ever died of a thought. Diane came back to me and said, hey, no one ever died of a feeling, but people do die of thought. And I thought, oh gosh, my initial thought was, she's right, because actually that wasn't what I meant to write. I did mean to refer to feelings, not thought. But then there came this conversation about whether you could die from a thought or not. And I very much felt, and we kind of Diane and I had a big discussion about it. And although a part of me wants to go back and change the post, just because actually what I really meant was feeling, I haven't done, because I don't want anyone to think that I've changed my mind and I've been corrected, because actually I still agree with what I wrote, that nobody ever died from a thought. Because thoughts are just as neutral as feelings, really. They're just the power, because I was referring to the power of thought, the thoughts when they literally just show up. We have no control over them, no control over what they are, when they're going to show up, how many there are, and what they say to us. that power of thought is it's the formless power of thought coming into thoughts that we get to label through our consciousness, being aware of them. And I don't think anyone ever died of that. I really believe that.
Now, were you ready? May I ask? I want to add in on that, because
sure.
this discussion, I think I'm frozen.
Your picture's frozen, but I can hear you.
Can you see me now?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. Actually, I also discussed it with Nikki, as I told you, Nikki Bartley, our colleague and friend, and the whole discussion that I had with Robert Church, who incidentally now left the group, unfortunately. Yes, after we had the discussion, he left the group. And that's perfectly okay. It's his choice. I think the principle now, the reasoning or the logic behind no one ever died from a thought is the same as no one ever died of a feeling. Because if we die of a feeling, or people die of a feeling, when they actually try to do something to take away that feeling, when it becomes unbearable to a point where we're having suicidal thoughts, we're depressed, we're having depression for long bouts of time, and it gets so uncomfortable. We don't know what to do with them. We don't know, perhaps we don't know, or we don't know, people at large don't know about the inside out nature of how we work. So we get desperate, we get the feeling, then we take the action that carries out that to eliminate the feeling. And the same is the same with eating. When I eat chocolate and I'm feeling really down, I just want to eliminate that feeling. But to me, this logic applies to thinking. And you made a distinction back there, or maybe we need to make a distinction, because this is what's not worrying me. I don't know what word to use. As you mentioned, there's universal thought, which we have no control over, absolutely no control over. And then there's thought that has already taken form, our thinking, personal thinking.
But and to a certain degree, we don't have that much control over our personal thinking either. That shows up too. But where the misunderstanding occurs is where we start to believe our personal thinking.
Exactly. And that is where I think that thought cannot kill, is because thought, as you said, is neutral. So on a visual level, I'm thinking, how can a thought, maybe it sounds ridiculous, how can a thought jump out of my head, grab a gun, and physically kill someone, which then ties it in, maybe we can talk about free will later, grab a gun, kill myself, take a flask of pills, and whatever, and down them. The thought in itself cannot kill me. But having said that, and Nikki raised something interesting, if the relationship we have with our thoughts causes us stress, which causes illness. So that's my question. Do those thoughts actually kill us? Or does the relationship, that's the way I relate to thoughts, that eventually can kill us?
Well,
And
I mean,
you have personal experience.
Yeah, I mean, taking the example of picking up the gun. You have, thought takes form as like kill yourself, and you can see that it's a kind of statement. It appears in your head, but that thought itself doesn't kill you. It's just a thought. It's just words. Just shows up and says kill yourself. And it's the action of pulling the trigger that actually gets the bullet in your brain. So that's an action, that it's the action that kills. And the other thing that I was musing on slightly, which I haven't actually thought through, so we maybe can explore this too, is that there are, there are some cases where inaction can kill too, because there is legislation, certainly in the UK, to cover circumstances where normally older people are self-neglecting, and to cover being able to give them medication and look after them where they might not even really want it, and that's a sort of self-neglect. So that's almost death by omission as opposed to action. But something is telling either the person with the gun or the person who, say, for example, isn't eating, not to eat or to pull the trigger. And that bit is again, it's a thought, but then we're getting into the realm of personal thinking, because the belief that I should act on the thought coming up that says kill yourself, that's a thought. A belief's a thought. And believing it's true, thinking it's true in that moment is the reason we would take action in those circumstances. But it is a thought. But we're also moving into the realm of personal thinking, which is what I call, poking your fingers in the machine or stirring up muddy water. That's down to personal thought. Now, personal thought may well cause you to take the action to kill yourself, potentially, but no one ever died from a thought. And I'm pretty clear that I'm standing still with us. I'm standing grounded, and I'm standing in my shoes with that one.
Yeah. So you're holding your ground, and I agree with you.
That's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now we have a question from Robert, but maybe Robert, I can read it, but maybe you can ask it yourself, because as I said, I really want this to be free and organic. Can we answer the question, Fiona?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the question I have is kind of the obverse of, if thoughts have the power to heal, and I'm new to 3 Ps, but I come from a science of mind, new thought background. And I've seen lots of evidence that changing person's thinking actually heals illnesses, heals things. But by the same token, the opposite has to be true then too, that if thought can heal, thought can hurt. And it's medically documented now, what's called the nocebo, which is the opposite of the placebo, where placebo is where you believe you're going to get well and your belief creates that effect. The opposite is that your belief in the illness actually creates the illness and can lead to death. And also there's the stories of people who believe in witchcraft or voodoo, who believe they've been cursed and then actually die. And there's no physical explanation at all, but their belief killed them.
Yeah. Yeah, and sure, there is certainly scientific evidence for that, and they've tracked that people with depression who are beating themselves up over years and years and years, it actually physically changes a chemical imbalance in their brain. So, I mean, I personally feel, and this is only my own personal kind of opinion, which is based on a hunch, because I've never done any scientific evidence, and I haven't done a lot of research into scientific evidence either. But I personally feel that, which is why I do what I do now, is that you can certainly get ill from having a lot of stress and anxiety and that sort of thing going, because that's kind of I believe that's my story. And so I wouldn't go so far as to say that there's no way that can not do that, because clearly it can. There is scientific evidence for that. And you're right, I've heard about nocebo as well. But I'm also probably leaning to the fact that actually that is verging on the personal thought as opposed to the power of thought, the personal thinking. because that kind of, that depression thing is if you had no thought about the situation, you know, you weren't affected by it, then you wouldn't be feeling depressed. So the depression part of it is coming because there's personal thinking there, you know, they're stirring the muddy water. And some people, you hear some people are really attached to being depressed, and they would never say they were, but you can, you know, you hear it in their language. They so believe because somebody told them that they're depressed and they'll always be depressed, and that they're a difficult case or whatever. They so believe it, they're really struggling to actually let go and see anything else. And there's possibilities then that, of course, their chemistry in their brain may well have changed and may be having a part effect on their condition.
I guess what the question that comes up for me is, in the 3 Ps paradigm, what is the relationship between thought, whether it's universal thought or personal thought, and physical reality? It's very clear to me that in the 3 P paradigm, that what we experience internally, our feelings primarily, comes from what we're thinking. But what I'm not clear on in this particular way of looking at life is what the relationship between thought and physical reality is. And if there's a relationship, then thought does affect physical reality. If there's not, if it's just our feelings that we're talking about, that's a whole different way of looking at things.
Well, I think the misunderstanding in the kind of 3 principles paradigm comes from thinking that our feelings, our experience of something, comes from something other than thought taking form in the moment. So something other than that, the power of thought arising in the moment. So that's really quite black and white for me.
Yeah. So I guess my question is so there's two parts to an experience. There's our experience of a situation. Then there's the situation in and of itself, regardless of how we're experiencing it. So my question would be, to what degree does our thinking contribute to the actual experience, the actual condition itself, and not just our experience of it? It's very clear to me that my emotional reaction to a situation is 100% my thinking. What it's not clear to me in this paradigm is the relationship between my thinking and the condition itself, not just my reaction to it.
To be quite honest with you, I'm not sure that I have an answer for that. I think it would be lovely to hear Keith Blevins talk about that. I mean, I've not thought about it on that level before. I mean, I'm tempted to sort of tiptoe into it, but by taking it one step at a time, rather than dealing with the whole thing, you know, seeing how far we get, and just explore that between all of us. So I don't know if you want to just, because something came up for me just as you started that, because, and that was around, you're comfortable with the fact that, you know, your feelings are coming from thought taking form in the moment; they never come from anywhere else. And then you were asking about the physicality of the condition. But unless you are having thought about that condition, there kind of is no condition. Because
I think it's possible to have...
Who is the person who sees it? It's a bit like the chair, isn't it? The chair becomes a chair when we label it a chair. It's simply a form.
Right. So how did the chair get there in the first place, though?
But do we know it's really there?
Yeah,
because
that's a really big philosophical question.
Which is a very big philosophical question, exactly.
Right. And then we get into personal thinking versus universal thinking and shared reality and all of that.
But then that is where we are, because that's what the paradigm is all about.
And so I guess that's the question I have that this topic has elicited in me is most of what I hear in the three Ps has to do with our feelings about what we're perceiving.
Mm-hmm.
My question is does the three Ps even talk about the relationship between what we're perceiving, regardless of the reaction we're having to it, which could be positive, negative, or neutral, to the actual event itself? Like,
Well, the
if
positive,
we
negative,
perceive
or
it,
neutral doesn't really exist until we have our experience of it, which is
right?
when
But
we put meaning on it. We create a feeling about it because we.
but the it that we're putting meaning on, how did that get there?
Hmm.
Does the chair exist whether I'm giving meaning to it or not? Or is it only in the act of giving meaning that the chair, that the giving of meaning not only creates my experience of the chair, but the actual chair itself?
That's the deep philosophical question, which I
Yeah.
know some philosophers do actually get that kind of non-duality. They do get that deep. I've not studied that deeply, but I think you can't argue that there is something there, because if you walk into it, you'll stub your toe. So there's something there that, even though when they put it under a microscope, it looks like more space than matter, it's something there that is more solid than the air between you and the chair at the moment.
So and I'm not trying to find the answer here. It's just, this is the curiosity thing that's going on for me, is I don't know enough about three Ps to know what the three Ps take on that particular question is. Because most of what I've been exposed to in the few months since I've been learning about this has mostly to do with our emotional experience, our feelings.
Yeah.
Which I think is huge, but this particular question, no one ever died from a thought. That kind of hinges on whether thought creates the condition itself and not just our experience of it.
Robert, there are other people who want, so I want to give other time. Thank you for your
I'm complete on that. I was just realizing that this is something I don't know about the three Ps philosophy.
Yeah, and I have to be honest, Robert, I don't think I've heard anyone speak particularly to that point, and maybe that's still something to come. Like I say, I would love to hear Keith Blevins speak on it. I would love to hear Keith Blevins speak on that.
Thank you very much.
Okay, now Will wanted to add something. Go ahead, Will. You can unmute yourself.
Hi, Will.
Hey, Fiona. Hey, Diane.
Hey.
Well, sorry, first let me apologize, because I didn't know if that was actually like the format of this conversation you're having today. But thanks for having the conversation. I've enjoyed listening to it. I actually don't. I think when I initially said I had something to say, you guys were on the like in the realm of this connection between thinking and then maybe like what we commonly like refer to as the physical world, or our physical bodies even. And what had come to mind for me in that moment was that we know that there is a physiological relationship, or there's a relationship between thinking and human physiology. The type of thinking that is happening, that tends to happen in the mind, has a downstream effect on, hormonal outputs, genetic, stuff. And to me, what that says is, we've all kind of had this experience of thought shows up when it does. And, we could ask lots of interesting questions about, how that pans out and, what it means and the why of it and stuff. But what I've noticed is that when I'm thinking good things, I'm feeling good. When I'm thinking bad things, I'm feeling bad. And I think sometimes in the Three Principles community, I've gotten the impression that because there can be such this emphasis on there's nothing to do. And, we're trying not to perpetuate this sense of I need to fix myself, I need to do something. I think that there are, some practices that have been shown, in like, cultures, religious traditions. I mean, if you think about the different meditations and practices that like the Buddhists have devised, where it's essentially a tool that one's using to have an impact on themselves, on their consciousness, on their body in some way. Breathing in, receiving all of the, whatever it is that you're receiving, your thoughts, your feelings, the situation, and then breathing out blessings. One experiences an effect of that. And so to me, it says that, very clearly that there's things that we're able to do to influence not only our physiology, but that has a downstream effect over, how our consciousness, how we experience life in general, and the level of consciousness we're perceiving from. So I must admit that I've been very guilty of like swimming around and floundering around and there's nothing for me to do land for quite a while. And, I've been kind of finding that I just feel better when I am not so worried about, the questions of why, but I'm just trying to have the best experience of my life each day and the people that are in my life each day. And that requires me to take a little bit extra of a step that, understanding and the mind can't give us. Like the mind wants to know, why am I doing this? And the heart just wants to open and be broken open and connect with people. So I don't know if that's at all in accordance with what this conversation was about, but thanks for letting me share.
Yeah. I mean, it's very interesting because the kind of deeper I've got into this, the more I'm beginning to realize that even though I in many ways, because I'm seeing so much clearer than I ever did, I feel that I don't chase a happy feeling. But that's nonsense. I do it all the time because I'm still hoodwinked at the times when, I'm still hoodwinked at the times when my boss writes me an email that's nice, that everything's okay. And that's nonsense, because in the next second she can change her mind and send me an email, and she frequently does, that's not so nice. And actually, it's hanging out with friends that we have a good time with is not consciously because we want to feel good, but we do it because we do feel good. And it's almost a subconscious, I'll repeat that because it was nice. And that's in a sense, that's us moving towards something that still looks like the outside makes us feel better. Whereas actually we could be with those friends and we could be with some people that we don't like, and we could still have the same feelings because the feelings only come from us. But we judge them when we think, like, oh, I eat chocolate because it makes me feel better, but I don't think I should eat chocolate. Therefore, I judge that seeking that good feeling is a bad thing. But actually, when it looks like it's a good thing, we tend not to question it.
I've noticed there's this tendency to label the things that our ego would conveniently like to label as, hey, this is universal mind and this is personal mind. And we can make a lot of judgy, shamey things, into the personal mind that, we let take control of us and, do these things or, even just worry about something for a moment. Like we have such a tendency, I think, to try to deny that we're worried, or we're anxious, or we're confused, or I don't know what to think about this.
Yeah. And even more and more recently, I've just really realized that in those moments when I actually feel quite calm in my head, but I'm still hoodwinked even in those moments. It's not that I've got, because Jamie talked a lot when I started. He talked a lot about having the very busy mind, and having a quiet mind was the place to be. But actually, you can be just as outside in a quiet mind. Just as outside in. And that by reflections means that you can be inside out even with a busy mind.
What do you
Because
think
it's you know, it's about being able to, you know, I don't necessarily feel, I don't feel sad, therefore I'm not consciously looking for something happy to cheer me up, which is kind of like almost like the basic level. But then the realization that I still continue to do things that give me a good feeling, or I think give me a good feeling, is still the same. I'm still looking to the outside thinking they give me the good feeling, whereas actually I could have that good feeling anywhere, in any circumstances. So I was just reflecting, you know, on the kind of like bad face, bad feeling, good face, good feeling. I'm not sure how that's true, whether that's true.
Did you? I'm sorry. You said bad faith, bad feeling, good faith,
Yeah.
good feeling.
Well, I said face. What I meant was face,
Face,
but actually
face.
it's like you know, the kind of, if you got a sad face, you must be having sad thoughts. I don't know. Is that really true? I don't know. It's just sort of questioning for me now whether that's really true.
Whether or not, if you have a mad face, you have mad thinking going on.
Yeah. If you've got like a sad face, can you be having a happy feeling?
I don't know. What do you?
I don't know. I was just floating in and out of my mind, and I was kind of looking for an example in my mind that maybe it was possible to have. I don't know. Does anyone else have any thoughts about that?
I want to. Will, I'm going to mute you and then unmute you again because there's background.
No, you won't. No, you won't. Yeah, so
that's all right. I want to tie in a bit into what Will said about, and also a bit what Robert said about the thought feeling and how it changes our physiology. And a bit of what you're saying right now is that I'm not sure if it's coming across as all muddled up. I think there's one important thing that in the these three principles, that as a person who's still getting to know the principles, I do not want to forget a very important element, and that is that I'm human. And that as much as I know about the principles, as much as I know that it's always outside in, when I'm not seeing something clearly, even when I'm feeling good, as you just said, we're hoodwinked. I think that in my experience, the deeper I allow myself to go into whatever it is I'm feeling, the freer I become of my personal thinking. I'm not sure if this is making sense. I picked on something before and I lost my train of thought. So I found myself now flowing in and out of my thinking, not in this moment, but during the days in my day-to-day goings, life. And I find myself, and I let myself flow in and out, whether it's inside out or not, I seem to relax completely. But if I'm judging anything, then I lose the plot. I don't know if this is making sense. If it's not, just ignore it.
What occurs to me, Diane, and what you're saying there is that, you know, it's very much what you set this group up for, really. It's like, we're human. It's okay to flow in and out of thought. It's totally okay. That's human. If you want to analyze everything about, am I inside out, am I outside in, is this a feeling coming from outside of me, or is this a feeling, you know, is this feeling coming from thought in the moment? If you want to sit down and analyze, then you're 3Ping the human out of yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, we just are the way we are, and we cannot totally make ourselves only go one way or the other. you know, we can't make ourselves totally be inside out all the time, and we wouldn't want to, because if we did, we'd go to the movie theater and we wouldn't be hoodwinked by the film, and we wouldn't get into the experience of the film. So life would be a bit dull. And I noticed that Robert's written here about for me, the difference between 3Ps being on the table is simply recognizing where good or bad feelings are coming from. Yeah, exactly. Whether it's inside out or outside in, I think as humans, we're still going to be attracted to what feels good and avoid what feels bad.
Yes.
Well, yes and no. Because some people are really attracted to what feels bad, and they do it over and over again, even though they don't like the feeling. And some people avoid things that feel good. And to be honest, we probably all do both.
Yes.
And we don't give it a thought. We just do it.
I want to push back up because Julian, is Julian there? Yeah, he's still here. Okay. But before I forget, because something's still hanging in my mind about the thought feeling sick and people suddenly going in remission, some people even going in remission without taking any chemo, whatever it is. I think we're forgetting one important element in this discussion, and that's wisdom and the power that if you allow, if you trust universal mind, and you know that you're in flow, and you know trust plays a very important element in healing. So it's not as if my body is going to spontaneously heal alone because I do it alone, but because there's something outside of me that's bigger than me, that and I'm open to it. So, and I think this is a very important part of the conversation.
But I think it's not, I agree that trust is very important, but I think the distinction for me is that if you're simply trusting and saying to yourself, I trust the process, I trust the process, I trust the process 500 times a day because you think that'll heal you, that's where you're mistaken. Because the trust is it's about, I really believe it's trust without attachment. Because when you're doing it 500 times a day, it begins to look like a tool and a technique to try and save yourself, and you've got an attachment to whether it happens or not. Whereas, you know, I haven't met anybody I can think of who's completely spontaneously gone into remission, but I've heard about people who have got rid of their cancer. And the sort of the key one whose book I would recommend everyone reads actually is Anita Moorjani. You can watch her TED talk. And I think what happened for her, or what I understood happened for her, because of course we all make our own story up about what we hear or what we read, was that she knew, she saw when she was outside her body that it was, if she had the choice to go with her father into the other side, in which case there was no going back, or she had the choice to go back into her body and experience whatever happened, potentially spend more time with her husband and her mother, and also understanding that she might be very, very sick and going through chemotherapy, and whatever happened would be okay, even if that was actually her demise, in that she only survived, say, another 2 weeks. And I think that is, for me, that was about her demonstrating a lack of attachment. She wanted to go back into her body because she knew that whatever happened, it would be okay. And she knew that at that deep, deep level, that deep embodied level, which I think is what Three Principles practitioners are talking about when they say that we're all okay and nobody needs fixing. However crooked their minds may look, whatever crimes they may have committed, they're all okay. And when we can be okay with whatever happens, that's when we get the freedom.
Yeah. Now I'd like to go, well, I'd like to stay a bit silent, but there are people commenting here. So, Julian, would you like to add yourself, or shall I read it out myself?
Can you hear me?
Julian, yes. Yes.
Ah, okay. I got dropped out earlier, sorry. What's happening for me is I can only share my experience, and my experience is it feels like there's a direction to my experience and it flows through me one way or the other. And when it flows through me from formless to form, so where I'm listening to silence and stillness, and then I feel the experience, and that can be, then thoughts and everything come, like thought as in the tangible part of it. If I see a thought and I believe that's true, like I think it's important, then I experience that thought. But if I see the thought and understand I don't have to, then I don't have that experience of that thought. And why that's significant for me is it's almost like when I get it the other way around and I think that thought is true, it's reality, and that person is doing something to me, or that's a positive thought and I'm going to feel good if I pay attention to that. I've got to hang on to that one or look for another positive thought. I'm coming from outside in, like from form to formless. Like I'm trying to make something happen. When I try to make something happen, I'm coming from, I don't know, ego or the smaller understanding, like a smaller consciousness. And so then my emotions go up and down when I come from that. It's like riding a roller coaster, because I'm riding all the thoughts pouring through my head and thinking that's where my experience is coming from in the sense of who I am. But when I remember that I'm the consciousness observing it and I feel that, so it's in my body, it's like I can have the up and down, but there's an okay underneath it all. And so those two put together give me a human spiritual experience together. So I don't know if that makes sense, but that with the death thing, it kind of feels like, you know, when we were saying something about we can feel our thoughts negative or positive and we can heal or not heal from that placebo nebo effect. I find there's another level to that understanding, and I feel like the 3P points to that other level where there is health already, but to access that you've got to kind of let go of the tangible part of your experience to look in that direction of unknown or before form. And that's what I think 3P points to, is if the way you're looking, where you look, your consciousness is like looking at a blank page, but that blank page is fertile health. And out of that comes new thought or new experience, new feeling. And from that direction, the experience flows differently, it harmonizes. Anyway, that's what I currently comes up for me when I'm listening. So I don't know, that's my attempt to contribute.
Will has added something, asked a question. What if even knowing that we're outside then doesn't matter at all, but it's not going to make any difference in changing what we feel? I think it's pretty much what I said before in different words, that I mean, whether I'm outside in, whether I'm feeling bad or good, yeah, if I allow myself the space to feel what I'm feeling without judging it, then I think it will just go in the same way it came. But sometimes, because I'm human, I get stuck. But I don't know, Fiona, I think we've just said this, but different wording.
I was just looking for the question.
Shall I read it again?
Yes, please.
What if even knowing that we're outside in doesn't matter at all, because it's not going to make any difference in changing what we feel?
Yeah, because that's the kind of that's I mean, that sort of talks to me about the knowing that we're outside in is that kind of intellectual knowing as opposed to the real deep embodied spiritual knowing. And there's a distinction there. So when we have the deep embodied spiritual knowing, that's when we drop the misunderstanding and the feeling is no longer there. And the other thing that I kind of felt that pops up for me in that sentence is that, and you know, Will, you probably get this anyway, but the outside in doesn't exist. The only thing that exists is actually inside out. It just looks outside in because we're under a misunderstanding. Outside in is kind of a label to help people understand that it doesn't work that way. So when we know at a deep embodied level that something doesn't work like that, we don't have a misunderstanding. And then we won't have a feeling. So I'm kind of getting to the stage that if I have a feeling about something, even though it seems to me like I don't have any thinking about it, I know that at some level, even if it's unconscious, subconscious, or whatever, I know that at some level I must have some kind of thinking about it. Otherwise, that feeling wouldn't be there, because I've got some kind of level of misunderstanding somewhere, which is creating the feeling. And that's enabled me to kind of, in a sense, to understand on a deeper level, on a kind of more, you know, like somebody would say to me, well, you still, and it's a bit like, we could perhaps use the example of, I mean, I'm really talking straight off the top of my head here, so I might get this completely messed up, but it's a bit like, I'm just wondering if it's like, you know, the example of spending time with friends. You'd say, well, I spend time with friends because I enjoy myself and I want to. I'm not searching for them to make me happy. Well, no, in a conscious way, you're not. But in reality, you do it because you are happy in their experience. And it's very easy to see that, it's very easy to start to believe that you're happier when you're with them. And I think that's the kind of the distinction where that's coming up for me now, is where I have a feeling about something. I can't think of an example now, which is not very helpful, but when I have a feeling, when I want something to be a bit different to what it actually is, you know, whether that may be, you know, at work or and even though I don't have lots of thinking about it, I just prefer it was different. And I actually don't have very much feeling about it, but something says I prefer this was different. That's me having an attachment to something being different to the way I currently see it, which is a misunderstanding. And I've learned to accept that. Therefore, I have this feeling that I want something to be different. So I have a feeling that I want to go away. And therefore, that must mean I'm looking for happiness to come from somewhere else, or for a better feeling to come from somewhere else, because I'm looking for that feeling to go away. Because if I was totally inside out, I wouldn't have that feeling in the first place. I would be okay with anything. But I'm human, so it doesn't. I don't function like that all the time. In fact, most of the time I don't function like that.
And
Jamie always used to say to me, most of the time I'm outside in, and I used to look at him and say, but I'm so much more inside out than I used to be. And I was so proud of the fact that I was, you know, so much more inside out. My life was so much better. And I thought, yeah, I must be getting up the scale towards, you know, I must be over the 50% mark now. But he would then turn around to me and say, you know, and he'd been doing it for 10 years longer than me or whatever. And he'd say, yeah, but the kind of like, the more I understand this, the more I know that I'm less inside out all the time. So it's almost like the more you know, you think, no, I'm still back at 5%, you know?
So,
and on those times when our ego says, it shouldn't be like this, God, this is horrible, don't want to be here, this is not true, that's when we feel crap. And when we can leave it and be detached from it, like, fine, I'm at 2.5%. Do I mind? No, because that's the way life works. Yes. I'm a human being. Yeah. Then I'm fine with it. Then it doesn't hurt. And then I'm not poking it with a stick either, or stirring it.
Fiona, I'm going to just interrupt you for a minute, even though I know you were in the flow. I'm very aware that it's 1 minute over 9:30, and I'm happy to keep going. It's entirely up to us. Just want to make you aware of that. But just to tie into what you said, and another question that Will added, and a quote of Dickon Bettinger, and the fact that I started my group, You Can't Repeat the Human Out of Yourself. I think in what you've been saying, Fiona, is, yes, I'm extremely aware that I'm living mostly outside in. And if I can let go of the fact I'm living outside in and I'm not attached to anything I'm feeling, then we'll be fine. And I really like what Will said. What if pain is part of this whole evolutionary process of consciousness, the divine taking form? What if God came here to play by feeling everything and being fully in the human drama? Now, if I may, I'd like to add something personal about my own personal experience. I'll start with a quote of Dickens, and it says, "When grief and loss and sorrow wash through us, unimpeded and without judgment, we experience these feelings as the natural and beautiful flow of life." And I've noticed that when I take my foot off the brake pedal, so to speak, I don't know how to say it in English really, when I allow myself, especially to experience sorrow and grief, now this may sound like woo-woo, but it feels like I'm being sucked into something. I'm being sucked into something so much bigger than me, and I let go and I break down and I cry and I really, 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 really cry and I let go. And maybe touches on a bit on what Julianne said before, because what you said really touched me before. Is that I'm able to be with it and observe it, and it's painful. But it's so liberating. It's so fresh. It's like I'm experiencing all the pain, or am I not experiencing all the pain? But when I land, I feel free, and I can never go back to the same level of consciousness I've had before. It's like something is dislodged. But when I'm completely detached and not thinking, no, you don't have to feel like this. This is totally irrational. You know that you're continuously in the feeling of your thinking. But when I really give in, wow, it's magical. Now,
I mean, I totally agree with Will. I think, pain could well be part of this whole evolutionary process, because, and the divine taking form, because, I mean, maybe it's sent to us to test us, who knows, but how we experience it is still our own experience. And exactly, I really don't think we need to spend a lot of time focusing on what an illusion it is. once we see that it's an illusion, we stop focusing on the fact that it's an illusion, because we don't get ourselves so much in that trap. The times when we need to the times when we feel the need to focus on it being an illusion is when we're feeling lots of it and we want to fix it. And then we tell ourselves, damn, this is an illusion. What can I do? How can I make myself see through this illusion? And that's wanting to fix something. When actually leaving it alone, it's an illusion. Okay, fine, I'll leave it alone. It's an illusion. I don't feel like I agree with that right now, but actually, whatever. And I think you're right, Diane. I think there is I had quite a big insight fairly early on. And I can remember where I stood in my kitchen. I'd just come home from work and I was really angry. And I kind of stopped in the kitchen and said to myself, basically tapped myself on the shoulder and said, hey, you're feeling angry. You must have a lot of angry thoughts going on. And my other voice turned around and said, I don't give a shit. I'm really angry. So I threw a paddy in the kitchen, stomped up and down, swore a lot. And within a few minutes, literally in a few minutes, I was laughing at how bloody ridiculous that must look and how bloody ridiculous it felt. And then the whole thing dropped. So I don't think there's any, problem with feeling the feeling sometimes,
Absolutely.
I learned a lot from feeling that feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think feeling the feeling is what what Sid pointed us to. Someone asked him, what do you do when you're angry? He said, nothing. I feel angry, period. And I'd like to, I find myself wanting to hurry up, and yet we're all relaxed and calm having this conversation. We seem to be enjoying it. So I just want to go through the comments. Robert said, the need to repeat an affirmation often comes from the hidden belief that the opposite is true, and we're trying to overcome that. Which is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mireille said, we are here to experience life, the good and the bad. Yeah. Will said, the moment we think we're outside and we're in, and we're in effect creating that experience in the moment and then trying to get out of it. What about intuition?
Mm. I don't know. Intuition, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. I would say that's your wisdom, I think, would be my first thought. But I don't know. I find myself being far more intuitive, or maybe it's actually not so much more intuitive, but maybe I'm more willing to listen to intuitive things that pop up now that I have have a lot less fear about what might happen, and how much more I know that whatever happens, I'll be okay either way. Then I can follow my intuition, because I think previously I would have been much more like, oh yeah, but what if this goes wrong, or what that goes wrong? So it would have been much more in a sort of fear state with intuition than I am now. Things show up, and also my mind is calmer, so I hear them more. And that's all I can really say about intuition. I don't know, but it might be wisdom, and it might not.
Okay, right now I'm trying to read, so I can't multitask, so I did listen half. I half listened to what you said. I'm glad we're recording this so I can listen again.
Mm.
I'm not sure if this is what's coming up for me right now. I can continue reading the conversation, or I'm not sure if we can tie it in with God's will or have another conversation about God's will. That is something I said that we would discuss,
yeah.
but
we're sort of darting around with lots of different things, and maybe we've moved off the original topic.
Yes.
And given that we're already over the hour, it might be worth doing another one on God's will, and just reading the comments here so that we've picked up what everybody said.
Exactly.
And if you want to comment on those things, then that's relevant.
Yes, I agree.
And then go and do the God's will some other time. I want to say I really like Robert's comment. So we can be inside out about our being outside in. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's great. Absolutely.
And I've copied and pasted it, and I will put it on my Facebook group.
And then the other thing I'd quite like to see, Diane, if you get a moment, would be post that thing that that you read out from Dickin, because I mean I have some other thoughts around that, around grief as well, which I'd be happy to share at some other point, but I won't go into now. But I think that's an interesting quote, and I'd like to reread that too. So what else have we got here?
We don't even have to judge ourselves with the thought of irrational.
Nope, we can be irrational if we want to.
Yes.
Go throw a paddy in the kitchen.
Aware, accept, appreciate without trying, feel resonance with what you're saying, and quote. Okay, I already posted it on my Facebook page, but I will do it again. And then we play, Will said.
Yeah, we play. I mean, let's all play with life, because you know, we don't know how long we've got. So we might as well be doing something we think is fun in the moment. Because in the next moment, if we choose it not fun anymore, we can stop doing it. So, you know, it's and we can do something else that's fun. You know, that's like, we never know how long we've got. And it might look to us like we've got 30, 40 years or whatever. But sad reality that I experienced in my family this very time last year, was that my sister, who was 45, suddenly had no more time. And that's tragic. So whatever you do, go have fun with it.
And it's really...
What's Will said here at the end.
Yeah, and I want to tie into what you said, because I think this is what we digressed, and it's okay, it's fine. It's what came up in the moment. But the whole question is, do we die from a thought? Does one die from a thought? And in the beginning of the conversation, I was absolutely convinced that we don't. But I'm not sure about it anymore.
Well, I think, and I pointed you to something I think that Garrett had written, and I haven't actually had the chance yet to go back and read all the comments on Garrett's post. And Garrett's post left me in a kind of like, I feel like I need to think about this a bit more, or I need to ponder on this a bit more. So, I mean, I can't comment on that at the moment, but I felt like that was an angle, and I almost wanted to post our question on his on his on the thread to his post and say, what do you think about this, Garrett? And see what he had to say about it. I can't remember exactly what he wrote now on his post, but I thought it was very interesting to consider in parallel with what we'd been discussing.
I can read it.
You can just read the little bit at the end. There were 2 lines, I think, towards the end. But we could get into a whole nother discussion about that, I expect.
It's simple. All choices present themselves in the form of a thought. It can't work any other way. And as we agreed above, you're not personally responsible for and don't possess the power to control any thought that occurs to you. Are you talking about that? Yeah.
So then he says, does he not say at the end, therefore you can't choose your thoughts, or something like that?
Well, it's a very short post. Let me read it. A power you don't possess. Here's a super quick post to help clear up some confusion. It seems to me at this stage of the game that most of you who read my weekly articles understand that you don't possess the power to control what thoughts pop into your head. That's wonderful. However, many of you feel that you, or some controlling force inside of you, do, capital letters, possess the power to act or not act on thoughts once they occur. As a reader told me last week, I'm not responsible for my thoughts, but I am responsible for whether or not I follow my thoughts. Well, with all due respect, this common claim is questionable. Why? Because a thought occurs to you out of your control. And then the choice of what to do with that thought, which is nothing more than another thought, also occurs to you out of your own control. To illustrate, I want to tell that dude off equals a thought. No, I'm not going to tell that that dude off equals another thought. It's simple. All choices present themselves in the form of a thought. It can't work any other way. And as we agreed above, you're not personally responsible for and don't possess the power to control any thought that occurs to you. Such liberation. I was listening to Michael Neal, who talks about, I'm not sure if this is digressing, but it's coming up for me, free won't. And we don't have control of whatever comes up into our consciousness, but we do have the free won't to not hang out with certain thoughts. But so, which means we can actually say to that thought, no, I'm not going there. But Garrett is not saying this. Garrett does not agree with Michael Neal. At least that's how it comes across to me.
Well, Garrett's saying the thought comes up, I want to punch that person in the face. And then he says, the next thought is, I'm not going to punch that person in the face. So that would suggest that the thought that I am going to punch that person in the face is also a thought. And I guess the decision that you are going to do it is a thought. But then is the actual action of doing it a thought or not? The action, or is the action an action? But I don't know the answer to that, I'm afraid.
Neither do I.
I mean, I think an action is an action, and you don't stop and think, and your brain doesn't go to kind of like all the little nerve endings and the synapses and say, okay, you connect to 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 you connect, and you muscle contract, and therefore your arm comes up and then your hand goes out, and you don't think your way through that process. Just like we don't think our way growing from a baby into a human. We don't think our heart beating every day. That's something that just happens. But I don't think a court of law would accept that my punching someone in the face just happened.
Yeah. We do live in an outside-in paradigm anyway. So we can go on and on and on and on, and I see. Yes,
and I think maybe maybe we can post our thoughts on what occurs for us around the Garretts, and maybe we should ask him the question. Maybe I will. I'll find a moment to do it. But I haven't heard the thing about Michael Neal's free won't. If anyone can put a link up to that, I'd be interested to listen to that.
Yes, I'll send you the link on your message.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
I'm wondering, before we wrap this up, if you have anything else to add. Will, Mireille, you would like to add something yourself? No.
I'm okay.
Okay.
It was very interesting. Thank you.
Okay. So all that remains is thank you all. Thank you, Fiona, for spontaneously and so quickly. We did this on a very short notice. Thank you, Will. Thank you, Julianne. Is your name Julianne? I think I'm pronouncing it really badly. Okay.
I think it's Julianne.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your time. I will post this on my Facebook page, and I will send this to you, Fiona, so that you can post it on yours.
Okay, thank you.
I
might not post it on mine just because I realised that I mentioned my boss, and I probably shouldn't have done.
Oh.
Put it in the group. She won't be in there.
Okay, Fiona. Okay, that's good. Okay. Guys, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for joining us, and I'll see you on the Facebook page. Oh, by the way, Amir and I are having the conversation, I think, on the 14th. I'll see you then.
All right, 14th of February.
Yeah.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. 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 Bye, Will.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hang up. Switch the recording off.
It happens on its own.
Oh, but you can end it if you want to chat to me afterwards. That's all.
Okay, stop.